Hi everybody, it's Ange from iPerformance Nutrition, and on behalf of the P360 8-week challenge, I wanted to take you guys through how to interpret your SkinFold results and your body composition assessment. So as part of our challenge, we do a before and an after testing when it comes to looking at how we measure physical change. And so there's two aspects to why I do this. Number one is to make sure that with any intervention that you want to do, you want to be able to have a way in which we can see a physical transformation. So this is made really easy if we look at doing subcutaneous skin folds. So basically measuring the body fat that sits between the skin and the muscle layer. And that's essentially what I'm doing when I'm taking skin fold pinches. So for some of you guys that have already had this done, you will also have your record now emailed to you. So I'd encourage you to just bring that up now. And so you can go through your own results as I walk you through an example that we have here. So the first thing is to look at is we do 7 SkinFold sites, and this is a collective sum. If we look down at the numbers, it's calculated in millimeters, and it's just a measure of the subcutaneous body fat that I'm picking up when I'm doing that and measuring it with my SkinFold calipers. So the total sum is what we're looking at as a total number. So on this example, we have 111.6 as the total sum of 7 SkinFolds. Now, if I take that number and go right down to the bottom of the page and I place myself in a category, so either male or female, so this particular example was a female, so I will be looking in a normal female range. If we go across and have a look at where that sits, at 111, it sits between the average category of 101 to 120. And so that's where you want to plug that number. So have a look at your total sum of 7 SkinFolds and then go down to the bottom end of the SkinFold range and have a look at where you sit at the moment. Now, the difference between a normal range and an athletic range, and remember this is just population data, so it's just some normative standards that we've used. The difference between a normal and an athlete is obviously the level of training or the amount and volume of training that you're doing. So I would say at the moment, if you are doing more than 5 or 6 hours a week, then you can classify yourself in the athletic zone. And so you'd be then looking at the bottom 2 lines, either male or female. Now, if you did any less than that, then you'd be happy, I would be happy that you classified yourself as in the normal range. So choose whichever one that you wanted to go in, depending on your level of training. Have a look at your sum of 7 SkinFolds, and this will give you a baseline starting point to say, okay, well, where am I at? Now, of course, this doesn't mean anything besides the fact that we're going to do a final measure at the end where you can actually interpret the difference. And what we want to see over time is that we can't spot reduce when it comes to body fat, but we can have a look at the overall sum of your 7 SkinFolds reducing. And that's essentially you losing body fat or your fat cells becoming smaller, okay, by the way of energy expenditure or a deficit that you've created with your nutrition and your exercise. And that's how we like to do things here. So the other 2 things is a weight category, number 1. Now this might vary depending on what time of day that you weigh in, which is why I would ask you guys sometimes if you have taken your morning weight first thing in the morning. So this would be your raw measure when you get up in the morning, go to the toilet, jump on the scales with minimal clothing. That's your real true measure, okay? Making sure that you've got scales at home that are on a hard surface as opposed to a soft surface. So don't put them on carpet, put them on a tile or a cement sort of, or a wooden surface floor so you get an accurate response. So you could put your AM weight in there if you so wanted to, and what that would do is it's no different. It just means that over the course of the day you are drinking, you're eating, and you might take your weight at a different time when we come to do those measures the next time round. So that might skew your weight result or your weight difference a little bit. So if it's important to you to be a little bit more accurate, then you can take your morning weight at a close proximity to when you took your weight for the body composition measurements, and then of course make sure you do the same thing at the end of the measurements as well, or at the end of the challenge. Now the other thing that we measure is circumference. So this is basically what we term girth measures, and it's basically looking at centimeters, so a measure of centimeters with the measuring tape around your body. And these are taken at different parts of the body because we can base this on anatomical landmarks, and we can ensure that when we go back the next time to do them that they are actually at the same spot. And so we are measuring a true difference or a true change. So if you have a look down the column, what we've taken is a waist measure at narrow point. That's your first measure. The second measure is your waist at belly button point. Now, of course, as you lose body fat or change your body composition, in fact, your belly button might actually change. So it's a reference point to see how your circumference is changing over the course of time. The next is your gluteal your gluteal girth, and this is basically the widest part of your hips with your feet standing together. Then, of course, we go down, we have the calf, and that's taken at the biggest point of the measurement. And then we have a mid-arm point, and that was relaxed. And also, for some of you guys, it was very, very surprising to see that I did a flexed arm circumference as well. But what this will tell us over time is that when you're doing any sort of intervention, your circumference might decrease if you've lost body fat. However, your mid-arm flex shouldn't vary too much, because what we're looking at here is to hold or increase muscle mass. So this just measures the peak of the bicep, and it's an indication of us knowing how your body composition has changed. Even though you might be a smaller person, in fact, your muscles are still there and they're still active. And in fact, for some of you, you might actually increase your muscle mass over the course of this time frame. But it's nice to know what your body occupies in space in terms of a circumference. And the last measure that we do is a mid-thigh measure. So you can see there that everything that we've done is based on international standard of level 1 anthropometry metric testing. And so you will notice that I have made a few markings on your body. Now, I have to say that these are a permanent pen, so you need to scrub extra hard tonight, otherwise you're going to forget about them being there, and you might rock up next time and go, oh, what was that from? So make sure that you get rid of those markers, and as I said, it's simply for me to identify anatomical landmarks on your body, so the next time I go back and do your body composition measures, I am making sure from an accuracy standpoint I'm going back to the same spot to measure that change over time. Now, the other thing I wanted to make mention of course, is what we try to achieve over the course of the P360 8-week challenge. And we really want to stipulate that this is not a biggest loser mentality. It's very much a program where we are supporting you guys and every one of your results. So it's a place of support and encouragement as opposed to competition. And I think this is really important for us to recognize. The other thing is, what I see a lot in the fat loss industry is that we have a false expectation of being able to lose as much as possible in a short period of time. And what this does is set you up for failure. It sets you up for being too deprived, and then of course affects your performance out on the gym floor, but also in life in general. You might be grumpy by not having enough food, and you might just not be getting the performance gains that you so wanted to out of the training that you guys are doing. So what I've done is I've given you a bit of a weight prediction, and this is based on what we know of effective fat loss science. So a lot of these studies that you will see nowadays, when we look at what's the best method or best way to lose body fat over time, there isn't one definitive way that we know works. Most things will work if you put yourself in a deficit. However, there are some things that we want to make sure that we're aware of in the sense of the rate of fat loss. So if we can slow that rate down, we can increase your protein, and that's going to come with your meal plan explanation. But this is a real key factor with that, in combination with doing resistance training, to actually maintain a lot of your muscle mass. And this is what's going to keep your metabolic rate high throughout the challenge, and also ensure that you still remain strong and active throughout this time as well. But it also means, from a fat loss perspective, that you will actually sustainably hold your results even after the 8 weeks has finished. So often we see with many diets that lose rapid weight very, very quickly, we tend to put the weight back on, and then you've reset your set point, and actually you overshoot that when you start to then allow yourself freedom, and your body just gets sick of being deprived for too long. And so that's what we're trying to stop in our challenge. And the biggest key for doing that is to get a realistic expectation of how much body fat we should lose over a certain period of time. So 8 weeks is actually not a long time frame. And what the data will tell us is that from a sustainable fat loss perspective, we want to lose no more than 0.5 to 1% of your current body weight per week. And so this is what I've done in your weight prediction. Based on the start measure of your weight, I've figured out over the course of 8 weeks, and making sure that I'm going within the 0.5 to 1% of your current body weight, that you expect to lose. For instance, this example is anywhere between 300 to 600 grams of fat loss per week. So at the end of 8 weeks, there could be an expectation that anywhere between the weight that would be likely fat, because we don't want to lose any other weight other than body fat or stored body fat, it wants to be anywhere between 55 to 57 kilos on the scales. So I hope this makes sense to you, because after all, fat loss is not something that's linear as well. So even though I've set that expectation, it is just a general assumption that that's probably what you might lose safely and to maintain that. But of course, everyone's individual and everybody's different. So fat loss is never linear. Some weeks you might find that you might not even drop 200 grams, and that's totally fine if fat loss is your intent. But then the next week you might overshoot that and lose 700 grams. So what I like to do is make no assumption until what you are doing from a consistency perspective is done for a minimum of 4 weeks, until you can truly assess a true change from a body composition perspective. So whatever intervention that you're doing, I say don't quit it. Do it consistently, no matter what the scales say, for 4 weeks, and then see the difference between then your start measure versus your 4 weeks on measure. And so I wanted to highlight this because it's very important that I think far too many of us go into a challenge expecting to get rapid weight loss and actually overshoot what our expectation would be of fat loss science. So we're all about sustainability and we're all about long-term change. And that's the biggest key that I wanted to highlight when I'm explaining your results and your skin folds and your measures, is to understand that over the course of this journey, you, number one, need to enjoy the process. And when you're restricting whole food groups or completely maybe whole different foods that you really, really love, you're going to not enjoy the process. So there is an element of what we describe, let's eat more to fill and nourish ourselves and still have our discretionary foods, or the foods that maybe might not be so great for us, but we can have it in moderation considering that we're eating really well the majority of all that time. And if you can manage to do that, then this becomes a lifestyle. So fat loss then becomes the default. It's something that just happens as a natural occurrence and a consequence of eating well, getting your health right first, training and eating for performance gains, and then body composition takes care of itself. So that's all I wanted to say today, guys, with the body composition assessment, and I hope that's given you some clarity around understanding your measures. I really don't want you to focus on the numbers. Of course, what we do is behaviors. So this is just a nice little way for us to gauge and for you to show some sort of validation in terms of confirming the results that you're going to get at the end of the challenge. So thank you for your time, and please join us with a multitude of other information recordings that we will have coming up. And I wish you all the best on your journey.